Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Racers Driving League for the start of season number 19 with the official team draw here tonight on the channel. I am your host, Zach RC, and for the first time ever, I am super proud to introduce our very own Red J, driver turned commentator. Red J, welcome along to the commentary box. How are you feeling this evening, mate?
Yeah, thank you, Zach. Thank you for having me. Really looking forward to this draw tonight to see what everyone gets for their teams. Of course, we've got the pre-season testing to come for that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they all get on tonight. And then, of course, Australia just 7 days from now as well. For the first time, I think, in 9 seasons, we're going to actually be starting the calendar off in Australia. So it'll be interesting to see how preseason goes tonight, but maybe not as crucial as in previous seasons.
We'll have to wait and see. Obviously, a number of changes on the grid this year. Of course, brand new cars. Going to be a Fun 25 game about a week old at this point. And of course, the reverse tracks, one of which we're using at the very end of the season. Silverstone in reverse, the last race of the season. But of course, a long way to go until then. But tonight's job for us too is just to give everyone their teams and see who's where on the grid. So I think we're ready to start. Ready to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into it.
Right, without further ado then, so our first lineup for the evening is Alvar and Ben. Alvar and Ben with McLaren last season. It's time now to spin the wheel and determine where they will be on the grid for season 19. And they will be with Visa Cash App Racing Bulls. So the reigning Constructors Champions now have Ben and Alvar behind the wheel. Fantastic looking car this year, must be said. Of course, the white looking brilliant on that machine. Reggie, obviously, that lineup, consistent point scorers last season. Alvar scored at half the races last season. But in terms of qualifying, I found those two to be sort of wild cards over the course of the campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Alvar had a really, really good season last time out. Ben, of course, was capable of having a really good result as well. I think I remember not last season, but the season before that, I think he finished in the reverse grid finale in P3 at Portimao. So, look, both of them very capable of getting good results. They'll be happy that they aren't in the kick Sauber. I think Ben was said he was going to kick off if he ended up getting that. So he will be very happy with that. Alvar, yeah, you know, I think probably one of his main downfalls has been penalty pens that he gets during the race for corner cutting, but I think it hasn't been quite as bad last season that I've noticed, but it has probably more so in the past. But it's a good lineup, and I think they should have a solid season together.
Solid season. Hopefully that is the aim for these two. Of course, hopefully another midfield run this time around. In terms of our next team then, moving on to Obsessed. Of course, Reggie, your former teammate. Obsessed will be partnered with HB Cook, who's making his full-time debut in the upcoming campaign. Let's spin the wheel one more time and see whereabouts they end up for the next season. And they are the ones that are sat in the Kick Sauber for season 19. So obviously a team that's perhaps not the most desirable in terms of livery. I mean, I like it personally. I see nothing wrong with this Kick Sauber livery. I think last year's was a bit uglier. This one looks a lot nicer, I'd say.
I completely disagree with that. I think it's absolutely awful. But yeah, I think, you know, Obsessed and Cook, it's a really good lineup. It's an exciting lineup. Obsessed, you know, great teammate to have. Last season, he was really, really strong at a number of races, probably more latter half of the season. You think of some of the results that he got. I think he scored points in Baku, Singapore. There might have been also a couple other races. Of course, he scored all of the Merckx points last season. Qualifying, he's been also really good at. And, you know, I think it's a case of him for this season just trying to get a little bit of better racecraft. Yes, he did get a few points finishes, but, you know, he was also one of the highest for driver penalty points last season, so we just need to try and cut that out a little bit. Cook, of course, still relatively new to the league, a few reserve appearances last season, so it'll be interesting to see how he can get on. I think both of them are very capable of scoring points, and I think their main goal will probably be to try and see if they can essentially probably not finish last. I think that's going to be realistically what their expectations are, and it shall be interesting to see how both of them get on.
Obviously obsessed with his highest finish last season, career high best in Singapore, where he finished 6th place in that Grand Prix. Of course, they had a fantastic race in Vegas as well. Things sort of fell apart from towards the end of that Grand Prix. Second half of the season was fantastic for Obsessed, but obviously I think by the first few couple rounds, but obviously Cook could be a driver to give him a run for his money. And I'm being told I'm still hearing I'm hearing my notifications for some reason on the stream, so I'm gonna switch those off. Normally stream mode turns on when I turn OBS, so that's a unusual problem there. But anyway, yes. I've lost my train of thought completely, but yeah, I reckon this team as a whole will be capable of challenging some more of the established teams this season in terms of the midfield, but obviously have to wait and see in terms of where we go from there. In terms of our third team then in the lineup, or our third pairing, will be Curtis and EJ. Of course, these two are fresh lineup here together for the first time in this campaign. We'll spin the wheel again and see where they end up for season 19. It will be with this prancing horses. Scuderia Ferrari will be housing Curtis and EJ behind the wheel this season. Of course, Curtis, quite an experienced driver there, compared with a relatively new driver in EJ. Of course, made his full-time debut last season midway through, alongside Matthew, to my memory. Those two debuted at the same race. Of course, scored points early on, and obviously the aim for these guys to be able to get some more points on the board and sort of try and establish themselves perhaps in the fight with P4, P5, that sort of point in the standings.
Yeah, Curtis, I think he's been around, hasn't he, for a long time, certainly since I was here, and probably or since I started here, and probably way before that as well. I think, yeah, brings a lot of experience into the team. He was with JB, wasn't he, for the last season or two. I think both of them will be thrilled that they got into the Ferrari. In my opinion, looking at all the teams there, that would probably be the one that I'd want to be in the most. I had 2 seasons as well. Of course, in Ferrari. EJ didn't really get a chance to race with him too much, mainly because I was at the back and he was probably more towards the midfield and the front. But it'll be interesting to see how they get on. I think realistically, they might be looking to see if they can go into the top 5 for the constructors this season. I think that might be realistic goals for them, and might even. If you speak to them personally, I'm sure that they'll both be eyeing podium finishes. So it shall be interesting to see how the two will fare over the course of this season.
Should be a very exciting watch from these two in the Ferrari. On to our fourth lineup now, Landlord and AT. So again, 2 experienced heads there. Of course, these two sat here with quite a remarkable 310 Grand Prix between these two drivers. But in terms of their next 24 races, we'll see which car they'll be taking for it. As you spin the wheel one more time, it will be McLaren, the reigning real-life Constructors champions in Formula 1, will house Landlord and AT for this new season. Of course, Landlord 2 victories last time out, consistent over the course of the season, one in P4. But, I mean, the last time, this is going to look like one in the past year, the last time Landlord and Grumio weren't teammates, which season 12, Landlord became champion. Is there any chance that this season do you reckon Landlord's got a shout for the title?
I mean, if he can turn up for quali, I think he definitely has got that chance. I think that was probably, honestly, I can't even probably count on one hand the amounts of times he wasn't able to make it for quali last season, and I think that was, it probably overall would have cost him, a Grand Prix or 2. I don't think it would have had an impact on him winning the title, because Grumio was just in a different class last season. But it's interesting, since I've been here, they've been teammates, so it's I'm really pleased to actually see that they've gone in a different direction. AT came back in last season after not driving for quite a period of time, and had a very sort of steady, mediocre start to the season. But I mean, Baku, Singapore, 2 back-to-back podiums. Yeah, both of them have got great experience. Landlord, I think, yeah, he did win 2 races last season, and Grumio and the 2 Ferraris were the only others to win. But he was 4th in the standings. I think, if he can start actually turning up for quali on a consistent basis, then I would definitely fancy him to be mounting a title challenge, and let's hope he does.
One thing I did want to ask about, because obviously we saw a fair few times last season where AT and Grumio partner up together in qualifying. Could that be a potential conflict of interest? Obviously, Grumio, AT be going behind his teammates' back, perhaps get assistance from another. I mean, could Landlord play that role for him?
We shall see. I wasn't even aware of that, to be honest. That is very interesting. But no, I think the 2 of them, look, I think with that experience between them and the fact that AT poured out some really good performances in the latter half of the season, looking at the field there, can they mount a constructors title challenge? I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility. I think there is a pair that is by some distance, though, probably going to be the favourites, which we'll be coming on to in a little bit. But I think they'll work well together. I don't think there'll be a conflict of interest that'll get very political if that happens.
I think possibly a bit too political compared to normal RDL standards. So we'll leave that whole debate for now. We'll move on to our next lineup. Our fifth lineup being Websy and Cott. Of course, these two to get back together for a third season after stints at Kick Sauber and Williams across F124. In terms of their next team, though, these two will be piloting the BWT Alpine machines, the blue and pink car. I think personally, one of my favourite liveries on this grid, when I first saw it in the launch back in February, honestly, I thought it looks like, you ever seen those pink and blue Starburst, not Starburst, like the drumstick squashies, those sweets?
I have.
Yeah, I thought it looked like that. I thought it looked like that. Can you see it?
I can't see it on the screen right now because I don't have the stream open.
Oh, yeah, that's on me.
What I will say is, I am in agreement with you this time. I think the Alpine is a really good livery. I think compared to what it was over the past couple of seasons, I think they've gone with like a massive upgrade on livery this year. It's a nice sounding car because they use Renault engines still, I think.
That's correct, yes.
So one of the better sounding cars. And it's a lineup that brings a lot of experience. Websy's been around for a very, very long time. I'm not too sure on Cott in terms of how long he's been around, but certainly since I've been here. So that's at least like 18 months, 2 years. But yeah, it's a really strong lineup. They did well last season. I think they were fourth in the constructors. Didn't win any races last season. That's not to say that they're not capable of winning races this season. I think it was probably more just the fact that there were 3 drivers who were, or 4 drivers who were just absolutely outstanding last season. But I think they'll definitely have their eyes set on a couple race wins this season. I think that's got to be their goal, and I think a realistic goal for them would be to try and finish into the top 3 in the constructors.
I mean, like you said, they came mighty close last season with 4th place with the Williams team, obviously beaten out by Matthew and Imrie in the Haas. Obviously, I mean, Websy, yeah, as you said, fantastic driver. He took 6 podiums last season. 3 of those came in the last 6 rounds, so perhaps a run of good form to continue there. Cott went winless, but hey, look, again, another history lesson for you, Roger. Cott sort of burst onto the scene for us back in F1 23. Took a few quick wins, sort of on arrival as a reserve. I believe he won his debut, which was in Japan that season. I think it was season 15, so may have been either during, or just at the start, or slightly before your time. I can't remember. Was it season 16 you started on F1 23, the second season?
Yeah, I think it was. And, look, I mean, one of the things that we can, to an extent, go off the results from last season, but probably not as much as what we would do for when it comes around to the winter season, when the next season starts in 6 or so months' time in December. Look, we're in a completely different game now. Everyone's had limited running. We've still not actually had a competitive RDL session. Yes, we're going to have one today, but it's going to be at Bahrain. It won't be at Australia. Bahrain's far more forgiving than what Australia is. It's far more wider, and runoff that isn't going to punish you as much. So going into Australia, we really are kind of going, I wouldn't say we're going into the unknown as such, because the best drivers, no matter what iteration of F1, they're always going to be there or thereabouts. But, Cott or Websy could potentially, there could be something within the game that just clicks for them and that takes them to the next level, where, who knows, maybe they could challenge for a constructor's title, or they might not be quite there compared to what they were hoping, and they might find themselves potentially, trying to finish in the top 5 as opposed to maybe their goal of finishing in the top 3. But let's see. I think if I was them too, I think they'll probably, if you ask them right now, would you take a couple race wins each and third in the constructors, they'd probably bite your hand off. But we'll see how the season pans out for them.
So perhaps a season that could go either way for those two in the Alpine. So we're halfway through now, 5 laps left to go. Our next lineup will be Imrie and Matthew, who placed 3rd in the constructors with Haas last season. Of course, Matthew came in halfway through there, replacing Pope. And in terms of the car that we're driving this season, they'll be driving the Red Bull. So Oracle Red Bull Racing's machine now belonging to Imri and Matthew. Of course, a strong lineup last season, perhaps one of the more volatile lineups, if I may say so myself. Imri, capable of leading Grand Prix, we saw it several times last season, but went winless across the entirety of F1 24 for numerous reasons. So I think the question on my mind is, can he get himself back in the top step?
Yeah, absolutely he can. I think when he is at his best, I think he is, very much within the top 3, top 4 drivers in this league. And even last season, he did go winless, but he was best of the rest for the drivers that didn't win a Grand Prix. He is a really, really good driver. I think it's just maybe that consistency that he lacks a little bit, and then also a similar situation to Obsessed. Just too many driver penalty points. That's something that he's got to change. I think I'm pretty certain he got 1 race ban from an accumulation of driver points last season. He can't really afford to do that again this year if he wants to mount a title challenge. I think that's got to be his goal, to try and mount that. And then, Matthew alongside him, good driver. He came in and he really hit the ground running. I think he's had 3 P4 finishes. And I think there was only a couple of races where he finished, outside of the points. I think it's a really, really strong lineup. I think they are. I think they're capable of mounting. I think there's 3 to 4 teams that I'm looking at here, and they are within those. They're within that group that if they are, if they work together well. If they drive to the ability that they know that they're both capable of, they can definitely go for a constructors. And I think Imri has the ability. I'm not saying he will, but I think he's got the ability to be a champion in this league.
Do you know what? I agree with you on the majority of those counts. I'd say these two are perhaps one of the stronger lineups. I mean, obviously there are sort of things that need to be smoothed out for the pair of them, but as a whole, if they can get those things under control, then I see no reason why they can't go and win a constructors. Perhaps even Imri or even Matthew try and challenge the driver's title. It could be anyone. I think that's the beauty of a new game for this league.
Yeah, absolutely. And Haas, were they 3rd last season in the constructors? And
that's correct, yep.
I mean, there was 2 teams that, if you look at the standings, were far and above beyond what the other teams were. But Haas, where I can't remember if Pope won a race last season, he was denied through no fault of his own through what happened in Monaco. And I don't know whether Haas were on for a 1-2 in that race, but that was obviously a massive disappointment for them. But I think both of them will be very happy with the car that they're being given with the Red Bull there, and I'm sure both of them will be at the front of the field. It'll just be interesting to see whether that they can be consistent and whether they can get themselves a few race wins. I think both of them will.
I'll have to wait and see in terms of what they've got in the locker for this campaign. I know Imri's done a lot of practice this one, so I think he's looking forward to this one, I think, above any other. In terms of our next lineup, then, moving on down to PJ and Ethan, the 4th straight campaign for this pair together. And in terms of their car, they'll be piloting the Green Machine, the Aston Martin, for season number 19. Of course, the car of your favourite driver, Lance Stroll. Obviously, gutting what happened over the weekend for Lance, but obviously unrelated for now. Obviously, I mean, these two are a good lineup. Of course, won that fight with the Alpine and Red Bull for P5 in the Constructors' Championship. I think their target is to try and make headway in terms of the Constructors' fight, moving to the upper table this season.
Yeah, I wonder which of those is going to go for Fernando and who's going to go for Lance. I know who I'd be going for. It was a bitterly disappointing Spanish Grand Prix for myself in terms of my favourite drivers, but never mind. Look, I think this is a really good team. They both work very well together. They're both very, very clean drivers. Ethan have probably battled with more than PJ. I think PJ finished 3rd at the start of last season in Bahrain. If he can have a start like that in Australia, I'm sure he'd be made up with that. It's an upgrade in terms of the look of the car because they were in the Sauber last season, so the Aston looks beautiful, doesn't it? You know, the royal green. It's great. So yeah, glad to see them still together. Got a great kind of working relationship. In all honesty, I can't remember where they finished last season in the constructors. I don't know if you've got that information.
P5. They were in that fight with Red Bull Alpine. That little scrap.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, look, I'm going to be completely honest. I think realistically, they will struggle to break into the top 4, but if they can match, P5 and the constructors, I'm sure they'll be very happy with that. I think there's just so many really, really good teams. It's going to be a tight. It's going to be difficult to get into those top, 3 teams. Going to have a real scrap on our hands. Maybe they might prove me wrong. And it's PJ Ethan 1-2 first race of the season. Imagine that. But no, I think I think they're capable of mounting a challenge again for the top 5 because they did it last season. But I wouldn't expect them to be anything higher than that.
Well, let's see if they got what it takes to try and prove you wrong, Roger. In terms of our next one, 3 more to go now, and our next one, quite a special one up here because this is where we have the reigning Drivers' Champion, reigning 9-time Drivers' Champion, Grumio, on the grid with JB this season. So this is the most experienced lineup on the grid. Overall, between these two, 649 starts combined, the most experienced pairing on the grid. In terms of the car that Grumio used to defend his World Championship, that will be the Williams, the Atlassian Williams racing machine. Perhaps, honestly, in terms of on the game, perhaps my favourite livery of all of these ones. I mean, the RB cuts are quite close, but I think it's possibly my favourite. The colours work fantastically on this thing. And, I mean, between the two of them, it should be a fantastic season. Of course, Grumio won 15 of the 24 races last season. Of course, the age-old question, will anyone catch him on this new game? JB, obviously, had a fantastic season on F124 first time around season 17. Season 18, though, only finished 1 place lower in points, but scored less of them. And obviously, there was a fair few Q1 eliminations I think he could have done without, which probably cost him the Grand Prix. In terms of sort of performance for this season, what are we looking at for these two?
Well, I'll tell you what, JB is going to be sitting there right now, grinning like a Cheshire cat, because what a chance. I can't remember if he's been part of a Constructors winning team. I would say he probably has been at some point.
Season 1, I believe, the very first time, way back in the day.
Season 1. I mean, what an opportunity to be back in with a chance here. Grumio was going for 10 titles and going for his 4th in a row. So there's more records to be broken there. It's a really good lineup. You've got statistically the best driver and statistically the safest or the cleanest driver, whatever way you want to look at it. From over the past few seasons. I was looking actually at the penalty points accumulated over the past few seasons. JB, I think over the past 4 seasons, had 5 penalty points.
Wow.
And if it wasn't for the incident that he had I can't remember what race it was towards the end of the season. It might have been Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
Was it? If he hadn't have had that incident, I think he would have gone a 3rd successive season without a penalty point. But you're completely right in what you said. Too many times last season he was knocked out in Q1. But then, quite often recovered and had a really good race. If he can avoid those Q1 exits on a regular basis, they'll be looking really good to mount up a Constructors title charge. I think it'll be a really interesting, partnership. Of course, Grumio and Landlords, not with each other this season, but I'm very excited to see how this partnership goes. And I think, Grumio's got to be the red hot favourite again for the title. Can anyone challenge him? I think there's probably 2 or 3 drivers that can. I've already mentioned one of them in Imri, and there might be a couple others that we're going to be coming on to rather shortly who might also be able to challenge. But it's a good lineup, and it's also a really cool looking car to be in for the season.
So on then to our second to last lineup. Apologies, I'll get my numbers because some of the notes on my left. Che and Dan, last season's runners up, 7 wins between them last season for Ferrari. But in terms of this season, though, they'll be driving the car that finished in 3rd place in the Constructors last year. Welcome Che and Dan to Haas and Reggie. I think you've got to agree with me when I say that overall, I think that this is the strongest lineup and perhaps the early favourites to win the Constructors title. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, coming into last season, I thought that they were going to win the Constructors. I was wrong, but they did mount a very, very good challenge, and they both had between them. I want to say it was 7 wins. I think Dan on 4 and Shea on 3 wins. Yeah, I think that they are Grumio is favourite to win the title if we're going to go off off form. But in terms of the Constructors, I think it is Shea and Dan who will win this. I don't think they'll fly away with it. I think it'll be very competitive between them, Grumio and JB, and then Imri, Matthew, and Landlord and AT. I think they're the 4 teams that it would be great to see a 4-way Constructors title battle. But I think Shea and Dan, they've got to be sitting there and they've got to be thinking to themselves, look, Landlord and Grumio aren't together. They've really, really got to fancy this. And that's nothing against JB or AT or anything like that at all, because they're both very, very capable of putting in a lot of really good performances, and that's why they're still absolutely the McLaren and the Williams are still very much contenders for this Constructors. But I think Haas, you got to look at the fact that both of them very, very evenly matched drivers. I think they are the favourites to go for the Constructors, and which of those can out of the 2 of them is going to be the favourite to go for the to try and mount a title challenge? Will it kind of be? We'll see how the first 12 races go, and then whoever's kind of looking to be in the better position and still in with a chance of the title, whether they try to play the team game and try to prioritise one of the drivers. Whether they just got full focus on going for the Constructors. I think both of them, it'll be great, and I'm sure they'd both be happy if they won the Constructors, but both of them have got to be sitting there at the same time. I've got to be thinking, to win the championship is far better, and, it is remembered more than winning the Constructors. So it'll be, very interesting to see how that'll play out between the 2 of them, but it's a great lineup. Really, really good.
Completely agree, and it could go either way in terms of who's to be fast in Australia. Have to wait and see if that in a week's time. But of course, that just leaves us then with one more lineup, and that'll be Cottony and Ozzy, and those 2 will be driving the Mercedes, the only car left. I think perhaps one of the nice deliveries on the grid. Russell Antonelli behind the wheel in real life this thing, and obviously we've got our own debutant in Ozzy, who will be competing in his first full-time RDL start, and I think his first RDL start overall, hasn't reserved at any point. So, a completely fresh face on the grid for next season. Of course, Reggie, you've been there as a driver making their debut in the RDL. You've been a driver for several seasons now. If you had to give any sort of pointers to a first season in this league, given how competitive it is, what would you say to Ozzy?
Be fast.
Be fast, okay. I'd say it works. I mean, obviously.
No, honestly, I think it's just kind of for that first race, it's just going to sort of be for Ozzy. Just don't take any unnecessary risks. It's going to be his first time there. Look, I'm sure he'll do fine. I'm looking forward to seeing how he'll get on. He's partnering one of the most experienced drivers. I think perhaps maybe the second or the third most experienced driver on the grid. I think probably if I was him, I'd be going to Cottony, maybe to see if there's any sort of pointers. I don't really know what Ozzy, in all honesty, I don't know what his experience is in terms of league racing in the past, whether he's completely new to this. I think, if he's watching this and he is completely new or relatively new to league racing, I'd be going straight to Cottony and seeing if there's any sort of pointers or helps with, with setups or anything like that. But who knows? I mean, we kind of are going a little bit into the unknown with him. He could very well rock up at the first race of the season and, be a contender to win, the Grand Prix. You just never know with these new drivers. I remember my first race in Baku when I came there, and I think I finished probably quite far down the field, but yeah, no, it'll be. It's great to see obviously new drivers. I am happy for the, for the most part. Aside from myself and 10th, it is everyone else that's pretty much been sticking around. But it is good to see new fresh faces. I'll be definitely keeping an eye on him next week, and to get the Mercedes as well is a really cool looking car. So I'm sure they'll both be happy with that.
So there you have it then. Those are your 10 laps. We'll go through them one more time. I think what they want to before we close off is we'll cap things off with predictions for drivers and constructors titles. But to go over them one more time then. So in the race, so Alvar and Ben in the Racing Bulls, Curtis and EJ in the Ferrari, Che and Dan in the Haas together, Grumio and JB in the Williams, Obsessed and Cook in the Kick Sauber, Imri and Matthew in the Red Bull, Webbsy and Cott in the Alpine, PJ and Ethan in the Aston Martin, Landlord and AT in the McLaren, and Cottony and Ozzy in the Mercedes. So with that in mind then, Red J, I'm going to put it to you now. I want your immediate picks to win both the Drivers and Constructors Championship, because this is perhaps one of the more competitive seasons we're going to see in both capacities. So give me your thoughts.
You want the top, or do you want the top 3 in each?
I'll take that up to you now. And actually, we'll go just the winners in this one, and then we'll think about that later on in the season.
I think for the constructors, it will be Che and Dan.
Che and Dan.
And I think for the drivers' title, people are capable of challenging Grumio. I can't remember his name. He was Scottish. That's all I can remember. What was his name? From a couple seasons ago, and he was really close to winning the title. I can't remember what his name. Gaming James, I think it was.
James. James. That's the one. Gaming James.
Yeah, he was very close, and arguably, he was in a great position to win the title at one stage of that season, but ultimately didn't. I think you'd be unwise to look past Grumio, wouldn't you, for the title? I think he will win the title again. To win 4 in a row would be fantastic, but I think ultimately, winning 10 titles in 19 seasons would be absolutely ridiculous. So there we go. It was a long-winded answer, but Che and Dan, for the constructors, and Grumio to retain World Drivers' Champion.
So in terms of the constructors, I agree with you there. My early pick will be the Haas team of Che and Dan. I think in terms of how strong that lineup is, you can't look past them. But in terms of, and this coming from a place that at this point I'd want someone other than Grumio to win a title. But obviously I'm impartial in that sense. But if I had to give you my choice, I'm going to say that this is the season where Che steps up and delivers the Drivers' Championship at last. He's faced off with Grumio several times in the past. Grumio's come out on top towards the end of it. But I reckon this is the one that Che will get it all together and he will be champion at last. So that is my pick. Che for the Drivers' Championship, Haas for the Constructors. So both titles going to Kannapolis.
Not Dan.
So Dan, I can see him mounting a challenge, and I think it just comes down to consistency. Both of them are fantastic drivers, but Che is more experienced competing for the championship, I'd say. Dan's up there. He's had a season at this peak level where he's been obviously a challenger for the championship, sort of like a dark horse. He led the championship very early on, so I'm not putting anything past him. I say he's got as good a chance as Che. He outscored him in race wins, but Che scored more points. And at the end of the day, that's what wins championships. Wins don't take championships. Points do. Consistency does. Of the two of them, Che I think is more consistent. I think he'll win the title. Yeah,
fair enough. And I think overall, looking at the top 5 that finished there, the top 5 drivers from last season, I think, I'm not saying they'll be in the exact same positions as last year, apart from I think Grumio will retain the title. I think the top 5 drivers from last season will be, in some order, the same top 5 again. If there's anyone that could break into that top 5, I think the most likely ones are probably either Webbsy, Cott, or Matthew. But look, let's see. We do go a little bit into the... I wouldn't say we go so much into the unknown, but we do go a little bit more into the unknown compared to previous seasons, because the practice session, which is taking place very, very soon, I think tonight, it won't be at Australia. It will be at Bahrain. So we won't actually have, and I know people will have, time trials and stuff. And yes, they can give a bit of an indication, but ultimately time trial is different. So when you've got 19 other cars around you on the track, the first indication is going to be practice 7 days from now. And then we will be in a bit of a better position to kind of find out where everyone is at. But all those 20 drivers, every single one of them is capable of winning the race next week, because it's Australia and it's the first race of a new game. How often have we seen races be chaotic on the first game in previous years? It's definitely happened before. It could well happen again, so I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm with you on that. I'm looking forward to it myself. And obviously, everyone, you can catch the action on the 9th of June next week. Same time, same place on the ZachLC channel. And that will more or less do us for coverage of this evening of the Season 19 team draw. Obviously, all our team laps are now in place and all eyes look towards the testing session going on in a few minutes' time. And of course, the first race next week. I'd like to take this moment to wish good luck to all of the drivers competing in this campaign. Hopefully, we'll all together till the end of the season. Hopefully, no one departs us over the course of the campaign. But yeah, it should be a fantastic season. Our predictions are locked in. And obviously, Reg, thank you very much for joining me. I'm looking forward to having you in the commentary box over the course of the campaign. It should be a very exciting one for your first season, so it should be a blast. So guys, that'll do it then. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like, share and subscribe for more future audio content as Season 19 gets underway. Have a fantastic evening, and we'll see you all in the first race next week. Goodbye.